I don't know if it's working this time. This is the kitchen. This is where the cash register is. These are all the things we have for sale. A lot of interesting books. This wall actually did not exist when the house was built. This was added later because somebody shoehorned a half bath in behind here last century, and it's still the only bathroom in the place. That side door goes onto a porch out the side, and that was the service porch where the business of the kitchen was handled. Informal entrance. And this was the pantry, which is not historical. It's just we use it for our house functions. And we walk in through the kitchen into the dining room. And the furniture is not original to the house, but actually the furniture was a donation, and the chairs and the sideboard or the china cabinet were a gift of W.T. Raleigh, our local industrialist, and they were in the original Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York before they pulled it down and built the new Waldorf. But the chairs are centennial pieces, they're called, and they are antiques in their own right. The fireplaces in the original house were the only heat in the house. There are 4 on the main 4 rooms of the house, and the door here goes out to the sun porch, which you saw. But when the steam heat arrived in the 1880s, then that was considered modern, whereas the fireplaces were considered dirty, old, drafty holes in the wall. So they just, as you can see in this picture, they just covered the fireplace with a shawl and pretended like it was a shelf on the wall. And you can see the furniture was quite different in their days. They used the Eastlake style of Victorian rather than the fancier Chippendale. They were actually very simple taste people. The Christmas cactus is 110 years old, by the way. The chandeliers are not original to the house either, as is the wallpaper. We don't really know what kind of chandeliers they had originally, but these were donations, and the reproduction wallpapers were put in at a time when the whole house was done over for a new roof and some very serious repairs. But they are reproductions of the era. The doors are very wide because in those days the ladies all wore the hoop skirts or the big skirts, and it was considered a very gracious house to walk around in. We call this the smoking parlor or Frank Bass's parlor. I sometimes call it the president's room because that's got a reflection on it, but we have Lincoln over here, and we have President McKinley's chair, and we have President Grant over here, and this case is full of a lot of memorabilia from the Lincoln-Douglas debates. The sofa is covered with horsehair. That's the mane and the tail, not the hide of the horse. And this wonderful whatnot was recently resurrected from underneath the pile of display items in the other barn. And it's an interesting piece in that a lot of communities were doing souvenir plates like they do these days, but these are old plates that I put on here because this whole whatnot, I don't know if you can read it here, it's carved in the back. It's a souvenir of Freeport, Illinois, 1878. Caressa Taylor, the youngest daughter, was married right out here on the front lawn, and I'll show you that a little later. But it was quite a formal affair and quite a social event. Everybody was in white tie and their finest clothing. The piano over here was manufactured in Freeport, and it is It's supposed to be the first piano off the line, and it has been in this house ever since it was new. So it's been in this house since for 150 years. We go into the entry hall, and here's the staircase going up. Oop, I forgot to turn on the lights. We might not get upstairs today. And this is the front door, the main door, the guest door, formal door. And we go into the front parlor, the guest parlor. The spinet piano is one of the few remaining original pieces that was Malvina Taylor's that she brought with her from upstate New York. The chair here is interesting in that in the 1870s, as I pointed out in the dining room, they were doing a lot of reproduction furniture from the 1770s. And this was a popular chair to reproduce, having been in the furniture business. This is a copy of the chair that is in Independence Hall, where they wrote the Declaration of Independence. It was a really popular chair to reproduce. And this picture shows the parlor with that very piano I showed you in the other room. This is where it originally sat, in this corner where we have this big box grand. And these are some of the family pictures. This was Oscar and Malvina, the builders of the house. That is the second daughter, Winnie, she liked cats. She had a ramp, a board from the ground to her bedroom window so the cats could go in and out. And that is Frank Bass, who married the youngest daughter with his dog Velmont. They all loved animals. And that is Caressa in her wedding dress. She wore her wedding dress every year on their anniversary for 20 years. But of course, they had well-worn corsets and she could do that sort of thing. But I'll stand back here and get a very wider pan shot of the parlor. It's not really furnished in the way that the Taylors had it, but these are all donations and they're all quite valuable pieces in their own right. So they are here. And then we walk into the room and there's a big double door, which are actually sliding doors, although we have the curtains there. We call this the Taylor parlor. And let me turn on the light. I forgot to turn on the light before we came in. There's the parlor from which we entered. There's the parlor fireplace. And over here we have a big bookcase with a lot of their original books in it. And they're all very, very good in titles, poetry by the old master poets and literature. They were a very well-read family. And the plates, Malvina took up a very popular hobby among Victorian ladies, porcelain painting, and she painted 132 wildflowers of Illinois, and she displayed them at a World's Fair in Chicago in 1893 and won prize for it. And that is Malvina and Oscar in their younger days. There's a kind of a funny story about them, which if I were doing a longer video, I would tell you, but I'll tell you later. And the book here, Caressa, this young lady, spent 2 years in Paris studying art. And this is one of her, it's a self-portrait. And she worked, her main work was this book of poetry, and she hand painted all of this. The letters are all hand done, the illuminations are all hand done, the pictures were all hand done, and in the style that the monks used to do the Bibles before the printing press was invented. And last year we had the entire book photographed, And we have a closed circuit loop here, which shows every page of the book that she painted. And this is her painting the book. And these are the woven cuffs she wore on her sleeves so she wouldn't smear the paint. Just a little family rundown here. This is the eldest daughter, Elizabeth. She died in her late 30s, giving birth to her third child. Only one survived, really, though, and that is, whoops, got a reflection. That is Elsie. She died in 1944. Now, the son, the only son of the house, who is Oscar, he had two boys, Gilbert and Roland, and they moved to St. Paul, Minnesota. And they are the ones who gave the house to the county to be the historical society when the last tailor that wanted to live here either died or moved away. So Elsie was the last tailor, and she died in 1944, and that's when the historical society came into being. This is Winifred again, Winnie. This being photographed in this American Gothic chair. And this sofa is an original piece. And that appears in this photograph taken about 1880s. And that's Oscar and Malvina sitting together reading a book. Winnie was a very interesting person. She was a spinster, but she not only loved cats, but she taught a Bible class, and she got all the kids fired up, and they complained that there was no place to go in the evening to be together except for the taverns and the bars. So she actually started the first public library here in Freeport. She had some books. She collected books from friends and neighbors and some more money, and she got an unused back room at the YMCA downtown and started the first public library here in Freeport. And she wrote two books too. One of them was a kind of an insignificant romantic novel, but the other one was rather important. She got interested in prisoners in the penitentiaries, and she started interviewing them and getting their stories down, and she actually got some laws changed because at the time, it was like in Les Miserables, where Jean Valjean was put in jail for stealing a loaf of bread. That was still being done. So she got a lot of laws changed and a lot of reform done. And I understand her book is still being referred to this day. Then we go back into the main hall. The tall case clock is supposed to be haunted. And we go right around. And that's the front door again. Then we go back into the entry hall. And back into the gift shop. And I'll continue on with this as long as I can have time. We will go out the back door. This is the way the guests come in. We don't use the front door on the normal for guests, but it's accessible through special parties and things like that. And the grounds, when they built this house, none of these houses or none of these trees were here, actually. This was all flat prairie, kind of on a rise of the hill. But I can get a picture of a house later that's still kind of like on the top of a hill without any bushes or trees around. But they planted all these trees, and then the town kind of grew up around them. The style of the house is called Italianate, mostly because it has very clean lines and it has the very fancy cornice work above it. And I'm walking around here. Now, Caressa and Frank Bass were married right out here on the front lawn, right about there. Let me get out of the sun here before I turn the camera back. Now we are on the front lawn. Actually, it's a bunch of weeds. And This is the front of the house. I actually had a wedding right out here on the front porch one time. It was very pretty. Very, very simple, but very nice. And we walk around here to the other side of the house. And I showed you the door, the French door to the sun porch a while ago. This is the sun porch. In England they call it a conservatory. But actually those lower sashes all raise up to the top, so it was a very breezy open porch, as well as they could put the windows down, and then it was a more enclosed porch in the wintertime. And then we walk. At one time, when this house was built, it was the biggest house in Freeport. It doesn't look very big now. In fact, one person commented that the rooms were really quite small. But at the time when this was built, this was a very luxurious house. And so we're back to the front porch, and I will say, did I mention that this was the service porch? I think I did. This is the outside of the service porch for the kitchen, and that door originally opened right into the kitchen, but now it's a kind of a little back storage closet area because of that extra wall that was built. And these are the servant quarters up above, and I'll see how this video turns out, and if it turns out, I will do a second half about the upstairs. So, bye. Talk to you later.